the battle between Google Maps and Waze is difficult to assess. For starters, both services are owned and operated by Google, which means they have a lot in common. In fact, with each update, the two navigation apps appear to become more similar. So, how are you expected to choose between the two? Thankfully, there is an obvious distinction between Google Maps and Waze, and the two programs function in very different ways. Waze, on the other hand, has a small but devoted following of users who swear by its unique technique of getting you from point A to point B. Google Maps, on the other hand, has a well-known brand and a long history to fall back on. But that distinction doesn't change the reality that the variations are minor, making determining which service is the best difficult. It will almost certainly be determined by your individual requirements and tastes. But, if you throw both applications into a head-to-head battle of Google Maps versus Waze, which one would emerge victorious? Waze versus Google Maps, availability. Google Maps and Waze are both widely available, as Google is infamous for keeping its hands in every proverbial cookie jar. Both apps are compatible with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay and are available for iOS and Android devices. So, regardless of which device you use or which vehicle you drive, you have the choice of using both. There are even versions for desktop browsers, albeit they are limited in that they don't allow for live navigation. You may still look up directions and places, as well as add items to your account for later retrieval on your phone. Waze versus Google Maps, navigation. Both Google Maps and Waze will get you where you want to go at their core. Despite the fact that they are both run by Google, they are very different. It's gotten to the point where the winner is largely determined by how you get about. Google Maps is a standard navigation tool. You type in a place, and it will find a way to get you there, regardless of how you intend to get there. Google Maps includes options for walking, driving, cycling, and using the bus. Google can even warn you about obstructions or traffic along the trip, giving you the option to detour. Waze, on the other hand, is designed specifically for drivers of cars and motorcycles. Rather of determining the quickest single path to your location and leading you to it, Waze constantly assesses the situation to ensure you arrive as quickly as possible. Both systems can estimate traffic conditions based on the number of users on the road, but only Waze takes action. Google Maps, like Waze, will display traffic or impediments on the screen, but the difference is that Google will cheerfully send you on the same predetermined route regardless of how things alter. Depending on how bad the traffic gets, it may ask if you want to take a different route, but it isn't pushy about it. However, Google Maps altered the method it calculates its routes last year. To make the planned route safer and more environmentally friendly, the service will now consider a number of criteria, including real-time traffic conditions and the amount of traffic lights. You'll save money on gas and be less likely to get into an accident this way. In other words, when Google Maps advises you where to go, it will consider more than simply your final ETA. And, more lately, it has begun to display you how much a specific route would cost if you passed through any tolls. It took a feature from Waze, to be sure. Waze is designed with one goal in mind: to reduce your time on the road and get you to your destination as quickly as possible. So it doesn't ask for permission to change your route in the middle of your journey, and it automatically provides directions to get you past any problems that may have arisen. All in the name of getting you somewhere as quickly as possible. While a result, Waze users frequently find themselves being sent to strange locations as the program attempts to get them where they need to go. Advertisement. When I was looking for directions to my parents' place, this was a great example. According to Waze, the trip would be 213 miles long and take 3 hours and 19 minutes. Meanwhile, Google Maps offered a shorter, 211-mile path that would take 3 hours and 32 minutes to complete. That is assuming you take the same basic route and do not avoid toll highways. Similarly, Waze estimated that driving to our London office would be a 45-mile journey that would take 1 hour and 12 minutes. Google Maps took me on a 2-minute longer 46-mile trek. Waze's approach has the disadvantage of being dependent on other active users on the road. So if you're the only one using Waze for hundreds of miles, the software has no idea what's going on. Both programs, thankfully, allow you to save maps offline for later use, though Google Maps is more forthright about it. The offline maps function in Google Maps allows you to select a portion of the map and download all of the data inside it. Individual routes could previously be saved, however, this appears to be no longer the case. Waze doesn't offer any of these options, but adding a route to your favorites caches the appropriate data so you can use it offline. However, because Waze relies on real-time data, if you lose cell coverage, you won't be able to access the most up-to-date information on what's going on the roadways. In essence, you lose the fundamental aspect of Waze that makes it unique. While the two programs are nearly equal when it comes to driving, Waze's unique technique of navigating around delays makes it a significant tool for drivers. Waze is the way to go if you don't mind traveling off the beaten path routes. Waze came out on top. Waze versus Google Maps, public and alternative transportation. This is a simple choice to make. Waze has nothing to offer if you're taking public transportation or another mode of alternative transportation. Not a single thing. Waze's purpose is to redirect you as a driver anytime it detects a faster route around obstructions, but you don't have that luxury on public transportation because you aren't driving. As a result, you'll have to rely on Google Maps. Public transportation, walking, and cycling are all supported by Google Maps. Trying to utilize Waze will just send you down any old road that a car can get down, which isn't usually the safest option. Google Maps, on the other hand, is brimming with public transportation information. For starters, it has complete timetables and maps for transit systems all around the world, and it can seamlessly combine these into its directions. It also gives you real-time updates on delays and other problems you might encounter on your route, so you're informed of any issues ahead of time. Google Maps can also predict how busy a specific service or region will be based on a combination of past data and the number of people it can see there at any one time. It even combines with local ride-sharing services as well as bike and e-scooter rentals when available. Waze can't compete with all of that, but there's still more that can be done in terms of alternate transportation, particularly in locations where such services are available. Google Maps is the winner. Waze versus Google Maps, user interface and design. Despite the fact that they are both from the same firm and do comparable things, Google Maps and Waze have very different looks. Waze uses a much simpler approach with fewer details and a cartoony appearance, but Google Maps has the look of a more traditional software with all the on-screen information that delivers. The discrepancy stems from the fact that these two apps were created for completely different purposes. Waze is a navigation app that helps drivers go from point A to point B while avoiding traffic and road dangers. Google Maps may be used for pretty much anything, including navigation, discovery, and even communicating with businesses. When it comes to navigation, though, the two apps appear to be functionally identical. The apps eliminate all extraneous information and just show you what you need to know. This shows your icon, your destination, and some other information such as speed limits and road dangers in your way. Waze versus Google Maps, advertising. Both Google Maps and Waze feature advertisements, but the way they handle which paid material you view is different. In general, Google Maps advertising is rather unobtrusive, though it has lately made adjustments to make ads more distinguishable on the map. For a business or site that is paid to be there, utilizing a square icon rather than a circular one is an excellent example. As I already stated, it's quite subtle. Waze, on the other hand, is quite intrusive and might display irritating banner adverts whenever you stop moving. Advertisement bottom line. There's no doubting that Google Maps offers a more comprehensive navigation experience. It not only has a lot more features than Waze, but it's also far more thorough and has a lot more resources. More to the point, Google Maps offers the capabilities to assist you in getting around, regardless of how you want to do so. Waze, on the other hand, is extremely limited, just providing navigation for cars. Despite this, it is able to provide a service that Google Maps cannot, which is strange given how long it has been a part of the Google family. Why? It's unclear what benefit Google derives from keeping both services alive but excluding Waze's standout feature from Google Maps. But that's the way it is. You should utilize Waze if you're a driver who just wants to get to their destination as soon as possible and doesn't care how you get there. Google Maps may be able to detect and predict road conditions, but it isn't as proactive in diverting you to a safer route when things get rough. Waze, on the other hand, is entirely worthless if you are not driving a car or motorcycle. It serves a very specific purpose, which Google Maps easily fills. In many circumstances, Google Maps isn't simply the best option, it's the only one.